In the more traditional branches of Judaism, they sing all their prayers with very few exceptions. In the Reformed tradition, many of the prayers are read rather than sung. It's not the most historic Jewish symbol. The most historic Jewish symbol is the candelabrum, the menorah, the seven-branch menorah. The six-pointed star became a popular Jewish symbol beginning with the first Zionist Congress that took place in Basel, Switzerland in 1897. This was the first effort to establish an independent Jewish state, which is now Israel. And from that point on, we began to see stars appearing in many different places that are designated as Jewish. Most modern Orthodox Jews, those are the ones who generally have a secular education, and they dress pretty much like everybody else. Those men will shake your hand or accept a handshake. Those people who we would call ultra-Orthodox, who have a more stereotypical traditional Jewish look with beards and black hats and so on, it's best to avoid extending your hand if you're a woman. More traditional Jews consider the timing of the Sabbath to be essential. All Jewish holidays begin at sundown the night before and conclude at sundown the day of the holiday. And the sundown is defined for the conclusion of the holiday of Sabbath with the appearance of 3 stars in the sky. It's a very strict way of looking at it. One could start the Sabbath earlier, but one can't end it earlier. Absolutely. Even on the highest of Jewish holidays, that's the holiday of Yom Kippur, even then, if it's a matter of saving a life, all these laws are suspended for that time. So all medical treatment could be performed, the person could be transported by vehicle on the Sabbath, anything could be done on the Sabbath to save a life.
No, I think that all families would want, whether if it was the Sabbath, would want their loved one to get the care that they needed.
Absolutely. The individual's health is paramount, and if there's any sort of a question as to care being administered, that takes precedence. There are days of fast, like for example Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, where traditionally Jews fast during that period for 25 hours. If a person needs to take a pill, if a person needs to eat, again for health reasons, then that takes precedence.
Yes, that's different. Now that has inherent sanctity, and that has to be treated with great reverence, unlike the skull cap.
What I always say is to ask the person, to respect that. If the person is able to speak for themselves, to ask them how they would like it done, because I think it's very important not to make assumptions about, because someone is Orthodox, to think that they may want it treated in a certain way. So I think it's important as much as possible to ask the person, how would you like me to handle it? I know this is important to you, how would you like me to handle it?
Not at all. In fact, I would be flattered, and I would really appreciate the opportunity to tell you about it and why it's important to me.
There's a biblical verse that's repeated 3 times, "Do not boil a calf in the milk of its mother." And in its original form, that verse referred to some pagan rite in which a mother cow was milked in front of her little calf, and the milk was boiled, and then the calf was thrown in. It was a way of pagans appeasing the different gods. So when the rabbis, who were the real interpreters of Judaism, not the biblical writers, when they wanted to find a scriptural basis for separating milk and meat, they used that as the basis. And technically, it's only meat that can't be mixed with milk. Chicken is technically not meat. But chicken can be thought of as meat. And because of that, chicken is also forbidden. Any fowl is forbidden to be eaten together with a milk product. But technically, it's allowed. That is biblical law. It's in the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, and it occurs one other time in the book of Deuteronomy. A swine comes from an animal that is disqualified on the basis of its anatomy. For an animal to be fit for eating, to be kosher, it has to have a split hoof, it has to chew its cud. And a swine, a pig, misses one of those qualities, is lacking one of those qualities. Similarly, with a sea creature, the sea creature has to have both fins and scales. If it's missing one or both, then it's not considered to be proper for eating.
There are people who are more traditional and more strict in their observance of dietary laws, and there are people who are less strict. But for me personally, it would be that. No pork, no shellfish. Typically, people tend to look at the dietary laws at different levels. Some observe them because there are biblical scriptures that encourage you to do certain things, and the rabbis have interpreted those things. Some do it because of a matter of cleanliness of the food, which goes back to a time when there wasn't refrigeration and the kind of preservatives that we have today. And others do it as a demonstration that they're different, and as much this is a demonstration as much to themselves as to others.
Depending on the degree of observance of that traditional Jew, either the person would eat a vegetarian diet on the plates that you provide, or special meals would have to be brought in, frozen meals, and served with plastic forks and spoons and so on. So it would depend on how kosher the person is. Some will eat everything but meat, fish, for example. They will eat as long as it's not cooked fish, and on regular plates, and others insist that all the utensils and all the plates have to be kosher.
I think they would go to whatever they and their family deem to be the best facility for them, and then the facility social worker or staff would work with them to get the meals that they required. So I think that families look for the best possible care and then look for the kosher food secondary to that.
With only those who are specially trained. The nursing staff has no responsibility. Nursing staff should just call the funeral home, and then the family decides whether they want the traditional tabila, as they call it, the traditional washing or not. And there's a society, a burial society, that takes care of this. Men wash the men and prepare them for burial with a shroud, and same thing for women. There's a women's Hever Kadisha and a men's Hever Kadisha.
Well, I know that the people who work in the facility would want to be respectful, and typically, I guess that would mean washing in some degree. My encouragement would be to not do that, but to rather call the nursing home. To call the funeral home and let them take care of that particular aspect of washing and preparing the body. I would also suggest, if it were me or a family member checking in, I would also make sure that you knew what my synagogue or temple affiliation was, so that the clergy there could be called as well.
Nothing can be done in Judaism to retard or hasten the disintegration of the body. That's the reason that cremation is not permitted, nor is embalming. Embalming retards, and cremation hastens. However, in the Reform movement, it is permitted, not encouraged, but it's permitted if people want it. There are various reasons. One is that the person should not be concerned about appearances during the time of mourning.
I think that for people that are very traditional in their beliefs and follow the laws of Shiva very strictly, I think that asking them if they want the mirror covered in the rooms where they are residing, I think could be very meaningful for them. Just to know that you respect their wishes enough to offer that to them, and so that, because some people might be afraid to ask. So I think offering it, is just very respectful of the individual.
For me personally, it's not a big thing. My parents, when there was somebody in the family who died, the mirrors were covered with a white sheet or a white tablecloth, something like that. And as a child, when I first saw this, I said, "Why are you covering the mirrors?" And the answer was that mirrors can be seen as a symbol of vanity. And at a time of mourning, when grief is paramount, vanity is not the primary issue. So you cover that for the first week during what's called the Shiva period, which is the immediate mourning period, which lasts 7 days.
If one practices the covering of the mirrors, one should keep the mirrors covered from the day of burial until the 7th day of mourning. The day of burial will be counted as one, and on the 7th day, one observes the mourning rites for 1 hour. We do have prayers to be said at the time of dying, but if a person dies without those prayers, there are no consequences, unlike the case in the Catholic tradition, I believe.
The ideal time to call the rabbi is at the beginning, so that the rabbi and the synagogue community knows that I'm there, and then essentially I would be on their radar screen, and I know that the rabbis, not just my personal rabbi, but most rabbis, would want to know that one of their congregants, one of their members, has changed the major circumstance in their lives. At a time where I might not be conscious, might not be able to make decisions for myself, I would want to make sure that my rabbi knew about it at that time as well.
The principles that apply to directives for Jewish patients, I think, apply to people who are not Jewish as well. We don't do anything to hasten death, but we don't have to take heroic measures to prevent death from naturally occurring.
I don't think you really have to differ in your approach, because you're using, in most cases, you're using standardized forms. So I would go over the forms and then sort of deal with the forms and then deal with their Jewish faith as a secondary thing and ask them if there were any other things that they wanted included or taken away based on their Jewish faith.
The most important thing, and it's not just within the Jewish tradition, but I'm sure it's in most traditions, the most important thing during a time of grief and mourning is to not be isolated. For the person to know that they are still part of the community, whatever loss they've experienced, they are still part of the community, and the community is there to support them. So one of the things about the Shiva period in Judaism, which is the traditional immediate mourning period, is there are friends and there are family members who, from the very first day, engage the mourner to let him know that he is not alone, or that she is not alone, and that they are there for us, whatever our needs might be. And so I would encourage the staff to always ask and always invite the individual to participate. If he or she doesn't feel up to it, they'll tell you.
That would have to be negotiated between the two patients. Different comfort levels would have to be negotiated, Some Jews wouldn't mind having a cross in the room, some would. Some Christians might not want a mezuzah on the door, some would. So I think it's an individual choice.
I think it would depend on how the person's level of functioning on both sides, as to how you would approach them. I think that in some facilities, I call it dueling televisions. If everybody has their own TV and it can be, and people don't communicate about it, it can be very uncomfortable, for residents, regardless of their faith. I think for ritual objects, especially lighting candles, things like that that are done either on the Sabbath or a memorial candle, I think that just letting the roommate know what this is and why they are doing it, I think in most cases that would be enough. Again, I think that you have to ask that individual. I know that it's not even facilities. Hospitals have, crucifixes on the wall, and I know that I can recall my father being in the hospital, and it didn't bother him having the crucifix on the wall and being visited every day by the priest. He felt any blessings were good blessings. I see it as part of the care plan, and I think in some facilities you might involve dietary in that. I know that there are national companies that provide kosher meals to facilities, and so that I think that if someone was going to be in a facility for a very long time, that I would think all of those people, along with whoever was the dietitian or the head of dietary who might be involved in ordering, special foods, I think involving the whole team, and letting the family and the patient know that you want to help them in that way, I think is going to be very important. One of the things that we did on a regular basis was to bake challah, which is the Jewish braided egg bread that is eaten traditionally on Fridays, part of the Jewish Sabbath ritual. And we would prepare the dough in a bread maker the day before, so you would come in the morning and you would already be smelling the dough. And in an adult day program, working with people with dementia, we look at the activity on several levels. It's a sensory thing. So the smell is the first thing. The other is the touch, so that the people could be involved in braiding the bread and then, of course, getting to enjoy and eating it. The residents weren't all Jewish. It was a Jewish-run facility, and so we observed all of the Jewish holidays, and we did not observe the Christian holidays. And I think that it was very much a learning process for both the staff and the other residents.